Good morning, church. I'm so glad that you've joined us. It's so good to see all of you here. And actually, you know what? You guys can see me. I can't see you. But regardless, I'm glad that you're here. If we haven't met yet, I'm Pastor Jesse. I'm the youth and young adults pastor here at First Ave. And I'm so excited to have the privilege to speak to you today as we continue our series Because of Him. Now, we're in the midst of this coronavirus and COVID-19 and this pandemic, right? And it's really changed and flipped a lot of our worlds upside down and changed how we live our lives. When it comes to our youth ministry, just a quick update for all of you is that we are still continuing to meet, and now it looks a lot different than what it did before, but we are still continuing to meet online. We meet every Tuesday still, and we're having an awesome time doing that. We play games in some creative ways. We still have small groups and discussions in some ways too, and we still have our teaching series and do our best to disciple students. It's an awesome time. We even have some video devotionals we put on social media, but it's exciting times. It's crazy times. I know there's a lot of negative stuff out there, but it's exciting to see where the church is going and even how youth ministry is moving forward in the midst of all of this. So thank you all for your continued support. And you know what? If you're a student watching right now, if you're a student watching on our live stream, I just want to encourage you. There's a little heart button there. Would you just hit that little heart button or even just say hi in the chat? Let everybody know that you're here, you're watching, you're representing our students, the next generation. Thank you for doing that. So as we continue this morning, we're going to be talking about this series Because of Him. Pastor Sean, he started it last week as he talked about the gospel and what that really means for us and how that interacts with our lives. And we're going to continue that thought as we talk about how Jesus changes everything. Now, for myself, when it comes to change, I really struggle with change. Change is not one of my favorite things. I can be pretty routine at times and have a certain way of doing things. Now, in our household, I fold clothes and do that a certain way. Shout out to Marie Kondo. We spark joy in our household. I fold clothes a certain way. We make the rectangle. I fold them in thirds, and I stack them end to end and not on top of each other. You don't do that. But there's a certain way that I do that, and I do not like change when it comes to that. Now, even when it comes to our dishes and our dishwasher, like if I'm looking at our dishwasher and things are not in there a certain way, I need to reorganize it before I can put another dish in there. But the reality is that things happen throughout our days and my days, and that like it doesn't always happen. I don't always get things the way I need them. Change happens. Now, I've come to learn that change can actually be seen as a way to move forward. In fact, change is really the only way we move forward and adapt. And if we never change as society, we'd still be without things like electricity. Women still wouldn't be able to vote, and we would still be having slavery. It would still exist. Change is what moves us forward. As individuals, change can be hard, but really, it is the way that we move forward. It's the way we become better persons, and it's the way we become a better society. Now, I resist change. I'm, to be honest, not a fan of it. I'm really not a fan of it. I like predictability. I like formulas. I do not like it when a pandemic forces me to change the entire way that I do ministry. But I've had to ask myself this question: why am I resisting change? What if this change is what is required to move forward? So we can view change as an obstacle, or we can view it as an opportunity. But the problem with change is that we often don't see what and when we need to change until it's too late. Like hindsight is 20/20 in all of this. And I'm sure we can all look back and realize things that we should have changed or should have done differently and how we were doing something, but it would have prevented a mistake that we would have done or bad habits to continue. And I know that how this is so true in my life. Now, I'm going to get a little raw with you this morning, if that's all right. Now, I grew up in a town called Cochrane. And I love this town. It was great. About 15 to 20,000 people there. But my parents at a very young age, when I was in grade 4, they got divorced. And if you asked me then, I would have given you like this classic, like super optimist answer. Like it's so great. Like I get 2 Christmases or something like that. Like that was just how my mind worked. In some ways it still does. But I would be ignorant to say that change did not affect me in a profound way. But change happens, and it quickly became the new normal for me. And I grew up in this town in Cochrane, and in this town, there really wasn't a lot of things to do as a teenager. I grew up here, and in my early teens, I did experiment with drugs and alcohol because there wasn't really anything else to do. All my friends were doing it. Everyone I knew, everyone I was close with, that's what they did. So naturally, I followed suit, and I was handling these major transitions in my life. I was changing schools. My parents had just gotten divorced. I was now dabbling with this destructive landscape of drugs and alcohol, and I was still even managing puberty and everything that comes along with that. But when it comes to all this change that was in my life, knowing what I do now about where I was as a student, that my story was seemingly already written based on where my family was at, my family situation, and what I was doing, where I was at, the circumstances around me, is that it seemed like my story was already written, that it was so hard for me to actually get out of that. Now, if you were looking at it, it can look kind of dismal, but the amount of change and instability in my life, the negative influences were there. They didn't set me up for a productive life. And that's no knock on my parents. My parents did an incredible job at raising me and setting me up for success and living a productive life. But I know that as a youth pastor, seeing students in situations like mine, they have their backs against the ropes, that there is this tension in their lives that they have to fight against in order to overcome that. And they need an incredible network of support around them, whether that's youth leaders, youth pastors, counselors, teachers, coaches, and so many other people around them so that they can live their best life. They need that around them. And I know I'm not the only one who has been at a point in my life where it's felt like my back is up against the ropes. Maybe you watching at home, you feel like that. You feel like your back is up against the ropes, you're tense, you're stressed, you're overwhelmed, you're not sure how you're going to get out of this season or deal with the change around you or know even what you need to change. Maybe you feel completely out of control of making that happen. Maybe you feel like you're driving a car with no steering wheel. You want to turn, but you're really just at a loss of really how to do it. Yeah, you could belt out Jesus, take the wheel, but you really don't feel like that's really going to make a difference anyways. But ultimately, this is what happens in our lives when we feel like we can't make a change or we feel unable to do that. Now, there's a man in the Bible in Mark chapter 5, that we're going to be looking at, and he had his back against the ropes. His story seemingly had already been written, and the world had written him off. And he was a lost cause. He was unredeemable, and some even tried to help him, but it didn't mean anything. It didn't do anything for him. Nothing could be done for this man. So in Mark 5, verse 1, this is what we're going to read today. So you can turn there with your Bibles at home or in the digital Bible app there on your screen. But it says this: Jesus and the disciples, they went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. Then Jesus got out of the boat. A man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain, for he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet, and no one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and he would cut himself with stones. Now, we don't often get someone's backstory in the Bible, especially unnamed characters like this one. So this really stands out to me. Now, these 5 verses, we get like a synopsis version of this man's story, of his backstory in this. Like this man, he didn't choose this. He didn't choose this at all. He didn't choose this life. He didn't make a bunch of bad choices that we're aware of. He was considered a lunatic because of this impure spirit that was possessing him. He was considered a lunatic. The townspeople actually drove him out to the remotest area they could think of, the graveyard, and tried to keep him there, but they couldn't subdue him, so they tried to chain him up and leave him there so he wouldn't annoy anyone, so he wouldn't bother anyone or hurt anyone. They tried to handle the problem themselves, but it didn't work. The man was also ended up destroying himself and doing these acts of self-harm, and this is graphic for a reason, because this man was hopeless. He was lost. He was hurting. He was alone. And he had no help. He had no way to work himself out of this situation. This man had his back against the ropes in only what can be described as a boxing match with the devil. His story had already been written, seemingly, and maybe that's you today. Maybe that's you sitting there at home and you feel like you are in this situation that you cannot work your way out of this story that is being written, and you feel like this is it. This is my life. This is the way it is, and you can't see a way out. Now, Paul talks about this idea in Romans chapter 7, verses 19 to 20. I'm going to read it for you real quick. It says, "For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing. Now, if I do what I do not want to do, it is no longer I who do it, but it is sin living in me that does it." Now, that's a lot of I do's and not to do's, but it's simply this. There's things that we do that we don't want to do, but there's also things we want to do that we simply cannot bring ourselves to do. because we have a problem with making that change. We need help. Sometimes you and I want to make a change, but we feel powerless to do so. Sometimes maybe it's addiction to pornography or alcohol or something else. Maybe it's how you habitually respond in anger to a situation or towards someone. Maybe it's these negative thoughts in your mind you just can't get out of. You just keep going through the same motions. Maybe it's a hollow emptiness that you can't fill, and you just keep trying other things, but you just can't fill that hollow emptiness inside you. How many times in my life I can think of, I've been there, I felt that. I don't know about you, but I faced many seasons where I feel like my circumstances dictated the course of my life, and I felt like there was no decision and there was nothing that I could do to reroute. And I would chalk it up to that these are the cards that I was dealt, or at least that these decisions, or I had made decisions that had brought me to this point, and I had to own that. Now, those are hard seasons. And I wish I had some helpful tips or like 5 ways or 5 things you need to do to bump that slump. I don't know. I don't have any of that for you today. But the reality is that sometimes our backs are up against the rope. You feel that tension. You feel that stress on you. You feel that in your mind, your body, your spirit. You feel like the world is caving in, that there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do to get out of it, to stop it. So you put up your guard. Like you're in this boxing match and you have your back up against the rope, so you put up your guard. You have nothing else you can do as you continue to be pummeled. And maybe you can get to the point where you hit the ground out of exhaustion or desperation, but you're just back up against the ropes. You don't know what to do, where to go, how to cope. So you start to give in. You start to believe that your story is written, that this is your lot in life, that this must be some cosmic punishment for something you did in the past, or at least you somehow deserve it, that this is what you deserve. You begin to believe that the story is written and that there is no next chapter, or even if there is, it's not worth reading. And I want you to know today that your story is not over. I don't know who you're watching with today, but turn to someone today on the couch in your kitchen and let them know that your story is not over. You can tell them that right now. And I know you may be thinking, I know what you may be thinking right now. You may be thinking, I'm 75 years old and I don't know what else I really have to offer. I want to tell you, your story is not over. Maybe you're sitting there thinking you've hurt a lot of people and you don't know if you could ever be forgiven. Your story is not over. Maybe you're sitting there thinking, I've had major losses financially. There's no way. I'm in debt. I can't get out of it. I can never recover from this. Your story is not over. Maybe you've been living this way for so long and you've been thinking like, can I really change? Can I even make a change? Is it too late for me? Your story isn't over. Now I look back in my life and I've been in situations where my back was against the ropes. My back was there, and as much as I wanted to believe I was in control, that I was in control of the situation, it was my decisions, I wasn't. And I am a very driven person, and I hate the reality that there are things in my life that I cannot control. And I want to believe with everything in me that I am persistent. If I'm persistent in something, if I keep doing something and I keep doing it, that I will experience breakthrough. So I tell myself this lie. I say this. I say, you got this. You're in control. And I try to give myself this little pump up speech to get me to keep going. But the reality is, if we're being honest with ourselves, is that we don't have as much control as we really like to think. Self-help books, they really tell us otherwise, right? They say things like fake it till you make it. But fake it till you make it doesn't really work when you try and you get so far and then you're in too deep and you can't get out of it. This mess you created maybe. Maybe if you believe you will or you won't, either way you're right. I've heard that one before too. But that only works until you really believe that you can and you fail and you can't. And you have no answers to it. I think many of us now feel like our backs are against the ropes in this boxing match with this pandemic, that we just don't have the energy to continue on, the finesse to outmatch our circumstance, or even the power to do anything impactful in the midst of it. Now, instead, we get into defense mode, right? We get into defense mode. We put up our guard and we just try to hold out until that bell rings. We say things like, I just hope we can make it until July. I hope we can make it just a couple more months. I just want to make it to the end of this week. We say things like this and we try to hold on, but the reality is that we are not in control and we don't know how long this will last. And we need to cope with this change that's happening around us. But it's more than that even. It's even deeper things that may have been going on before all of this. It's things like addiction or job loss. Maybe it's things like financial downturns. You just feel the weight of debt on you. Maybe it's failing a class, whether you're in high school or college even. Maybe you've hurt someone and you feel like you're absolutely unforgivable. Or maybe you've been hurt by someone and it feels absolutely irreparable. Your back is maybe feeling like you're against the ropes, and it seems like your story has already been written. You're in defense mode, and you may be ready to throw in the towel. And like this man in Mark 5, he's literally losing his mind. He's losing his mind. He's losing control of his faculties, and he's been cast out of society. He's alone with no support. There's no one around him. He has no one to call, no one to help him. He's being bound by chains by people. He's trying to turn to self-destructive measures because he just cannot cope with his circumstance any longer. He's got his back against the rope. He's ready to tap out. But then there's a boat on the shore. And that boat carries the power to give him a new story. And I believe more than one person needs to hear this morning. Your story matters. And your story is not over. I want you to write that in the chat if you believe that. Your story is not over. Continues on. The story continues on in verse 6. It says, when he saw Jesus from a distance, this man, he ran and he fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs, allow us to go into them." He gave them permission, and the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. And those tending the pigs, they ran off and reported this in the town and the countryside. And the people went out to see what had happened. And when they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man and told about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave the region. Because of Jesus, this man was given a new story. Whereas the world would say his story was over and was in damage control, Jesus came in and he changed everything. Now, how was this man changed? This man, he was just sitting there. And that's profound. Like this man, he could not be contained. He could not be controlled. And now he's sitting there in his right mind, controlling himself. He is changed. He's changed. But now he was sitting there showing that he was in his right mind, able to control himself, and he likely even got clothes from the disciples. The man was completely changed. He acted different. He thought different. He looked different. And you know this, if you've accepted Jesus, when Jesus gives us a new story, we stop living the way we used to. And this isn't out of obligation that we do this. It's because Jesus has given us a changed spirit within us. The same power that raised Jesus from the dead lives in us. So how much more will God give life to our mortal bodies just like it did to this man? And you may be on either side of this story. Don't think that you are the demon-possessed man. You may not be. You may be the man who is unable to make a change, who is like dealing with so much inner turmoil, but you may also be the townspeople who don't want to make any change. They want to resist change. They don't want any change to happen. Keep that in mind as we go forward. But when we look at this man, what did the man have to do? What did the man have to do to be changed, to change his life? First, it says he knelt before Jesus. He surrendered. Now, whether that was the impure spirit or not, we don't know, but there was an attitude of surrender before change was able to take place. So if we want to change by trying to control, then we need to surrender and release control. And if we are fighting change by trying to control, we need to surrender and release control. Either way, change cannot happen without surrender. And when change is necessary or inevitable, either way, a change is needed in us. Now, why were these people afraid? Why would these people be afraid? Makes me wonder. When Jesus does something miraculous, they say, and they were afraid. I'm like, well, why would they be afraid? It'd be an exciting thing, wouldn't it? But it says this. They were at a Gentile community. We need to understand that. They were a Gentile community, and that's why there was pigs, because it wasn't customary for Jews to herd pigs. So they were this Gentile community, and these pigs had economic value to them. And there was 2,000 of them. They just lost 2,000 pigs. Like, that'd be a major hit to any pig farm nowadays. Jesus sent the demons into the pigs, but the demons ran them off the cliff. So all the townspeople made the assumption that, hey, our pigs were fine before Jesus came, but now he came and our pigs are dead. What are we going to do about that? So they say, Jesus, we don't want you here. We're afraid. We don't want you here. Please leave. Even more perplexing is that these townspeople, they valued the pigs more than they valued the man. They valued them more than the difference that was made in this man. That this man was made whole. He was set free. Like, they weren't celebrating that this man was great. It wasn't like they saw him and they were like, awesome, this he's good now. He's dressed. He looks not crazy. This is awesome. They were upset about losing their pigs. If there's ever something you feel frustrated about that's happening to you, it's usually worth checking your perspective, your values, or your priorities. Because who knows how often we miss the miracle because we're so focused, because we had misplaced our focus. I want to say that again for you. Because who knows how often we miss the miracle because we had misplaced our focus. Sometimes we want to reject the story that God wants for the story that we want. And I'm susceptible to this so much. I can be so critical that I miss the miracle that's happening right in front of me. And so these townspeople, they wanted Jesus gone. They didn't care. They said, if he's going to keep doing stuff like this, we don't want him there. If he's going to keep doing all this stuff, he's going to keep getting rid of pigs and livestock, we don't want him around. Just get rid of him. Yeah, he fixed this man. Well, we didn't ask for that. We were dealing with it ourselves. We had plans to get rid of him. We didn't want him around, but we didn't need this. Jesus, we just want you to leave. You're causing a lot of trouble. We don't want you here. These townspeople, they had misplaced their focus. And what a picture that is for us. People wanting to exchange pigs for an act of God. Something some of us try to see a miracle in our lifetimes to see something like that. And these people want to exchange it for pigs. And it makes me think about reevaluating what I'm praying for. Like, are my prayers focused on me staying comfortable and secure in like my economic status or something? Or are they focused on seeing a miracle regardless of the cost? Am I seeking comfort over the miraculous? Or am I asking for safety instead of transformation? Am I hoping for personal fulfillment instead of the works of God? That's why Jesus, he taught us to pray, not my will, Lord, but yours be done. Because what our mortal bodies want all the time isn't always what is going to be the change that we need. The townspeople misplaced their focus. They valued comfort over transformation. But this man's story doesn't end here. Don't get that wrong. His story is far from over, family. Get this. It continues in verse 18. It says, as Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with them. Jesus did not let him, but said, go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. Now, there's a lot of theories as to why Jesus wouldn't allow this man to join him. We don't know. Maybe there just wasn't room in the boat. We don't know that. Who knows? But what Jesus did here is so counter to what everything else he has done in the New Testament, in the Gospels. Many times Jesus would heal people and he would instruct them to not tell anybody. Many scholars think that this is for him so that the people wouldn't be so focused on the miracle and that they would realize why he really came, which is to forgive the world. That he didn't want people to focus on the miracle. But there's other times where he didn't give any instruction. But I've read the Gospels a few times, and looking through it, I don't know if I can see any other instance. And so this might be perhaps the only instance where Jesus actually instructed the person who was healed to go and tell everyone. And this is key, because this man, he was healed in an area called the Decapolis, where there was a hub of about 10 cities and many, many Gentiles. Those people who weren't even of Jewish descent. And Jesus never traveled to any of these areas himself other than this one time that's recorded. And in fact, this story in Mark 5 is this one-off instance where Jesus seemingly goes directly to an area where there was no Jewish people. Why would he do that? Why would he do that? To give this man a new story. That story was just getting started too, which is amazing. This was not some drive-by healing. This was not like, hey, you're healed, we're gone. This was a course correction in one man's life that in turn changed countless more lives. This man's story was just getting started. And if you've ever accepted Jesus into your life, then you know that you made that decision. That wasn't the end. That was just the start of a new life in Jesus. And when there's a big change in our lives, whether we want it or not, when we get to the other side, there can be like this sigh of relief, like, it's just, it's finally over. But the change is what's over. Like God is just getting started with your story. God is just getting started. That change happened in you, and that change is what is going to propel you into the future ahead. God cares about your story, and whatever you're facing right now, in your world right now, whether it be a social isolation, addiction, or job loss, financial struggles, illness, or more, God cares about your story, and he is willing to change course, to redirect, to go out of his way, to go to you and give you a new story to tell. And it may seem dark at times. I don't want to be blind to that. It may be dark at times. It may seem like the nights are getting longer. It may seem like the depression is getting deeper. But there's a boat on the shore. Hope is on the way. Your story is not over. Your story is just getting started. But also, your story is not what you think. Like imagine this man. Imagine this man for a second, right? He just got his life turned upside down and then back around, and all he wants to do is follow Jesus. It's all he wants to. He wants to get in the boat, go with Jesus. Like amazing. Like the pastor in me is like, yes, let's take that passion, let's fuel it, let's do something with it. Let the man be with Jesus. Forget the haters, forget the people that cast him out, that outcast him. Like don't worry about them. Jesus got this guy. He's going to take care of him. He's going to disciple him. He's going to raise him up. He's going to turn him into the most amazing leaders. He's going to be one of these people who has this like out of this world testimony that will reach and change countless people's lives, and all he needs to do is just be discipled and trained, and he's gonna be amazing, like perfect. Pair that with the disciples, their seasoned tenure with Jesus. That's an amazing, like that is a match made in heaven, right? But his story is not what he thought. What he thought he needed was to be discipled, to be taught, to be trained up, and more. That's what he thought he needed. He thought he was missing something. He thought that there was something that he was missing, that he just wasn't quite there. He wasn't sure what the next step was, but he knew that he wasn't sure what that next chapter was that he needed to do. He didn't know. So he had one foot in the boat. He was ready to go. But this man had a life already wrought with pain and turmoil, and he was brought out of that by the grace of God. And he was sent out. Like this man, he didn't go to Bible college. He wouldn't attend a discipleship class. He didn't take a test. He wasn't baptized. He wasn't trained in any way. Like this man, like this is like a pastor's worst nightmare. The guy didn't even attend church, but he's being sent out to do this as a missionary. He didn't do any training. He was a man marked by God, though. He was a man changed by God who was given a new story, who was given a new life. And I love this about following Jesus. You don't have to be ready. You don't have to be ready for anything. In fact, the only time that you actually need to do something to be ready is when you already feel ready. So if you're sitting there on your couch right now and you're in your kitchen or something, you're sitting there like, I don't have what it takes. I haven't done this or that. I don't have the resources. I don't have the training. Like I'm not an expert. I don't know what I'm doing. I can promise you right now, God is sitting there right next to you. You can turn to him right now and be like, hi, God. He's right there. And he's telling you right now, I am all that you need. You don't need anything else. You are the full package. You just needed me to change your life. That's all you need. God is right there with you right now. Jesus sent out 70 people 2 by 2 in the New Testament. And he sent them out one time with nothing but the clothes on their back and the sandals on their feet. And they came back and marveled. They marveled at all that God did through them. I don't want you to miss this, though. Discipleship is important. Mentorship is important. Leadership is important. Learning and training is so important. Those are all incredibly valuable, but do not let that stop you from writing that next story or chapter of what God is going to do in your story. And be open to whatever that next chapter may look like. Because it may look like anything. And it's probably not what you thought it would be. But I promise you it's going to be better than anything you dreamt it could be. The man who was demon-possessed, he probably had one leg in the boat ready to go. And Jesus says, you know what? You should probably stay here. And if it stopped there, this would be a really sad story. But it doesn't. God says, no, go back to your people and tell them all that I did for you. Tell them the change that I made in your life. Tell them that. Imagine the bitterness, though, in this man. Like picture this for a moment. Like, this man, he had been cast out by his own people. They had rejected him, pushed him out, left him on his own, not cared for him. He must have thought, this boat is my ticket to leaving these people behind. I'm better. They're not. I'm going to leave this place. That's probably what he's thinking. Imagine the bitterness, the anger, the sadness he's feeling and processing in the midst of this change in his life that he had to overcome in order to carry the task out of telling people about the change God did in him. Not only did this man have a changed mind, he had a changed body, he also had a changed heart. God changed his heart. Whatever feelings he may have been going through or resentment he had, God changed his heart, because it says he went out and he told everybody. He told everybody about the difference that God made in his life. He told his enemies, he told his friends, he told his family, he told everyone. This man, he didn't know what he was getting into, though. His story was not what he thought it would be, but it was better. First, he thought he'd end up dead in a cave. Then he thought he'd be leaving on a boat with Jesus. But then Jesus gave him a bigger picture of being the first missionary to the Gentile world. That's incredible. That is an incredible call that this man had on his life, and he had next to no training to do that. Now, your story might not be what you thought it'd be. But trust me, it's better than anything you thought it would be. And if you're in this in-between right now and you're thinking like, I don't know, how is this happening to me? Why is this there? Why am I in this position? Why is this all happening to me? Woe is me. If you're in this position right now, I want to encourage you. Your story is not over. Your story is just getting started. And you know what? Your story is not what you thought it'd be, but I guarantee you it's better than anything you could have dreamt it would be. Hope is on the way. There's a boat on the shore. We all face seasons in our life where we feel like they are crippling us. We feel like they are crippling us and breaking us down. And we are all facing that now in some sense in the midst of this pandemic. But what once crippled you will be what supplies you in the next chapter that God is writing in your life. I'm going to say that again. What once crippled you will be what supplies you. Now, my story is riddled with these things that I once thought would be a hindrance, but eventually became what propels me. Because I face cancer, I can face disease. Because I experienced job loss, because I faced job loss, I can face it again. Because I faced addiction, I can overcome this too. Because I faced my circumstance, I can face the next one. Your story is constantly being written, and God is not finished with you yet, no matter what change is coming or not coming your way. And your story matters. Your story matters, whether it be depression, anxiety, or anger, addiction, diagnoses, loss, divorce. No matter what it may be, God cares about your story, and your story is not over. There is a boat on the shore. Hope is on the way. Your story matters. Your story is just getting started. And on the other side of this change, on the other side of what you're going through right now, God has a story that is not what you thought it would be, but it's better than anything you could have dreamt it would be. Now, the band is going to lead us in a final song today. And I want to encourage you to respond to what you've heard today. Mark 5 says that the man ran to Jesus and knelt before him in a posture of surrender. So wherever you're at right now, whether it be your living room, your kitchen, your bedroom, even your bathroom, like I believe God can still work in the bathroom. He can still work there too. But wherever you're at, we believe God wants to work in your life right now. If you feel God is asking you to make a change in your life, either to finally accept or actively make a change, I'm going to ask you if you would respond by kneeling where you're at right now. And I want you to know this. Surrender is not giving up. It is not declaring defeat. Surrender is actually where we find victory. Surrender is where we accept the reality that we cannot in our own power make the change that is required. Surrender is where we give control to the one who has the power to make the change we need. We're giving Jesus our story today, and we are going to declare that from a posture of surrender. Surrender is the first step to living a changed life. So wherever you're at, if you're not kneeling already, I'm going to give you that opportunity again to just kneel before Jesus. And I know it may feel weird. Your kids are probably going to look at you weird. Your wife might be confused. Your parents are probably going to think something's wrong with your legs. But don't worry about that. This is your moment right now. This is how Jesus changes everything. There's a boat on the shore, and hope is on the way. And all you need to do right now is run to Jesus and kneel before him. Let me pray for you right now. Jesus, we come to you and we surrender before you. God, we are battling change all around us right now. We are wanting change within us, though. Some of us feel like our backs are against the rope. So we come to you humbly and we submit our lives, we surrender to you, our situations, our hearts, our minds, our bodies before you. We ask you to make the change that's needed. And even more than that, God, whatever you want us to do, whatever change you want us to do, we'll do it. Whatever you need us to let go of, we'll do it. Whatever you need us to pick up, we'll do it. We just want you. So we kneel before you right now. Our stories are your story. Give us a new story today, just like you did to the man in Mark 5. Would you come into our lives right now and begin writing a new story of faith, of hope, of love that is led by you? God, we love you. We love you, Jesus. Thank you. Amen. So I want you to know your story matters. Your story is not over. Your story is just getting started. And your story is not what you thought. But because of Jesus, because of him, we have a new story to tell. Let's worship together, family.